planet is covered by a vast ocean of air. This layer of gases supports all life on Earth. It holds clouds of water vapour that drop life-giving rain, and it's a blanket that retains warmth from the sun. But human activity is increasing the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it is holding more heat, leading to unwanted changes to familiar weather patterns. The atmosphere is really a very fine layer covering the Earth. In proportion, the skin of an onion is thicker. Thermal variations in the atmosphere drive the winds that keep the air and clouds circulating, leading to variable weather. Over the past decade, new records in storm severity have been recorded, only to be exceeded a year or so later. More than 40,000 thunderstorms occur around the world each day. In the United States, where accurate weather records have been kept for around 200 years, experts have noted an increase in the frequency as well as the severity of storms. This is consistent with scientific projections of how weather patterns will change as the atmosphere warms. The increase in temperature means clouds hold more moisture that leads to heavier downfalls and increased risk of flooding. Hurricane Katrina, that devastated New Orleans in 2005, was one of the 5 deadliest hurricanes in the history of the United States and was the 3rd strongest hurricane on record to make landfall there. Meteorologists are desperately trying to understand how changes to the climate will unfold. The EUMETSAT headquarters coordinates information from a new satellite system designed to track global climate change. The weather satellites, constructed and tested at Darmstadt in Germany, deliver greater details on weather changes, as well as trace gases and moisture profiles within the atmosphere. The satellites monitor the world to give weather organisations more information and also act as an early warning system when extreme weather patterns are developing. Since its launch in 2006, Meteosat 8 has been providing atmospheric data, along with sea surface temperatures and sea ice concentrations. It can accurately measure temperatures at different levels in the atmosphere and represents a breakthrough in the global monitoring of the climate. The lack of observational coverage in the Pacific Ocean and continents of the Southern Hemisphere has led to the increasingly important role for polar orbiting satellites, able to overfly every part of the Earth. These polar orbiting satellites are able to observe the atmospheric system with microwave sensors that provide improved coverage of the stratosphere. Microwaves penetrate clouds that block visible and infrared observations, and they can probe the interior of clouds. Another satellite is monitoring wind direction. It uses a laser system to measure currents in the atmosphere. It will provide accurate wind profiles for the entire planet, including remote areas lacking any ground-based weather station. Updrafts in storm cells generate huge amounts of static electricity we know as lightning. About 10% of storms feature an overabundance of moisture in the lower atmosphere, which feeds an updraft with such vigour that it becomes greatly magnified and begins to rotate. In the most extreme cases, these can become tornadoes. These supercell storms can maintain an intense, steady state for many hours and actually exert control over the surrounding environment rather than being affected by it. The frequency of such extreme weather events is not only increasing, but tornadoes are occurring over a broader range. What were regarded as freak conditions are part of a new normality, and scientists are filling the skies with more complex monitoring satellites to help deliver more accurate weather forecasts. Current satellite technology relays images of the Earth every half hour. MSG-1 will double that speed and relay back higher resolution pictures and 20 times more data for a more accurate weather service. The new satellite gauges information on moisture, cloud buildup and ozone concentrations. When combined with data sets from ground stations across the globe, it will help predict the onset of extreme conditions. Other potential users of the new space observations delivered by this satellite include civil security services, who will be able to gauge the extent of natural disasters and coordinate rescue operations after flood or fire. Over the next 10 years, 2 more satellites will be launched, allowing meteorologists to observe changing weather patterns quicker and more accurately. The extreme north and south of the planet are registering the most obvious changes due to global warming. The polar ice caps are important drivers of the world's climatic system, and a worldwide effort to gain a clearer view of these changes is focusing on the Arctic and the Antarctic. The International Polar Year is a scientific program which will actually run over 2 years. One particular group is based in Iceland and Greenland. Their laboratory is a twin-engined plane, fitted out with sensitive equipment, including 4 cameras mounted in the nose, tail and wings. They gather data using devices called dropsondes that continuously measure atmospheric temperature and humidity as they fall through the air. On the coast of Iceland, a different group are trying to understand the interaction between the icy winds and the ocean. Iceland has a number of special features that make studies of heat exchange particularly interesting. There is a great deal of geothermal and volcanic activity in the country, and much of the nation's power comes from geothermal power stations. Work done here will be used to help policymakers understand the implications of climate change. When Hurricane Dennis hit the Caribbean and Florida, it was still early in the storm season, and yet it was the 4th named storm. This made it a record that looked likely to be broken again very soon. Scientists began using supercomputer models to create virtual storms. With increased air and ocean temperatures, the region can expect more severe storm activity more frequently. More accurate verification of global wind speeds will be available when the Aeola satellite is deployed. From a sun-synchronous orbit, it will look at a cross-section of the atmosphere. Its microwave sensors will be able to measure wind speeds through the atmospheric column. We realise that the atmosphere has no geographic boundaries. Airborne industrial waste in one area can fall as acid rain in forests thousands of kilometres away. Changes in the atmosphere can be studied in great detail from an airborne observatory, so American and Canadian scientists teamed up to study greenhouse gases in the remote northern latitudes of Canada. The Atmospheric Boundary Layer Experiment was the 3rd in a series of NASA-sponsored research expeditions. The aim was to study major ecosystems around the world to better understand the dynamics of the atmosphere. With the help of McGill University, a ground-based site was chosen in northern Quebec that featured forest and wetlands environments. Researchers built a 30-metre tower at the forest site to sample atmospheric chemistry and collect meteorological data. Meanwhile, at the nearby wetlands, NASA biospherics researchers spent countless hours measuring gases given off by these grass-like sedges. Because of their hollow stems, these plants are very efficient transporters of methane, piping the gas directly into the sky. Balloon sondes track local winds, temperatures and humidity, and an Electra aircraft flew repeated missions over the sites. 7 experiments took air samples and measured various chemical concentrations. An instrument that shoots a laser beam above and below the aircraft was used to plot a cross-sectional view of the atmosphere. The reddish colours represent regions containing higher concentrations of ozone, another greenhouse gas. The atmospheric boundary layer experiments were just one stage of NASA's continuing efforts to understand the dynamics of the atmosphere. The American Space Agency also has a long-established research program investigating cloud and storm patterns. The NASA team wants to learn why some weather formations develop into massive storms and why others simply dissipate. The TC4 mission for Tropical Composition, Cloud and Climate Coupling will help NASA identify key processes that affect global climate change and ozone depletion. The TC4 project is using 7 NASA satellites, 3 specially equipped aircraft in Costa Rica and Panama, and more than 400 highly trained experts. Many areas concerning the chemical and physical processes that occur in the lower atmosphere and its boundary with the stratosphere are not well understood. A flying laboratory can analyse the chemical content and composition of the clouds. The sensors can detect carbon monoxide, methane, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, and ozone. More detailed information is required to adequately incorporate processes such as cloud formation into global climate models. The ER2 is a high-altitude research craft that can almost reach the stratosphere. It regularly reaches an altitude in excess of 22,000 metres. A special pressure suit has to be worn by the ER2 pilots. At its extreme operational altitudes, atmospheric pressure is very low, and a human could not survive without the suit. Researchers from Costa Rica's National Centre of High Technology are supporting the NASA project by carrying out complementary tests using meteorological balloons. The data package beneath the balloon samples the air for various gases and levels of humidity and continuously transmits the information back to the ground. By combining the information from all the platforms, the TC4 project will build a three-dimensional picture of cloud formations. Converting all the richness and complexity of the Earth's varied environments into a computer simulation that will behave the same way as the planet itself is a difficult and inexact task. Extreme weather events can be predicted with varying degrees of accuracy, but to simulate what will happen to the Earth's climate over the coming decades is extremely complicated. An Anglo-Japanese computer, known as the Earth Simulator, is 40 times faster than any comparable machine in operation. By entering different variables, scientists can see the possible long-term effects of climate change as it may develop. A view emerging is that global warming could ultimately trigger another ice age, plunging the world into conditions that existed 20,000 years ago. What is certain is that carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels is holding more warmth in the atmosphere. In the short term, this seems to be changing weather patterns, and we are experiencing more extreme storms, droughts, and heat waves. Parts of the planet are more vulnerable. Coastal regions have always been subject to flooding, but extreme weather events are already taking a heavy toll in densely populated areas of Burma, Bangladesh, and India. Fluctuating weather patterns make it difficult to observe subtle or gradual changes, but the geological record shows that over long periods of time, the Earth's climate has continued to change. For most of its history, the planet has not supported permanent ice caps. Currently, we're in one of the Earth's cool periods. 20,000 years ago, during the Ice Age, the Earth was at the peak of one of these periods. How rapidly is the global climate changing? And how are we contributing to the effect? To learn more about the complex systems governing our planet's climate, an ambitious long-term study known as the Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program was established in 1990. It involves an international team of atmospheric specialists and an array of monitoring equipment at 3 locations in vastly differing climatic zones. Human activity is putting increased levels of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Current uncertainties about radiation-cloud interactions affect our ability to understand the implications of these increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases. For decades, scientists have been using computer models to help predict weather patterns. But predicting changes in climate over centuries is more demanding than plotting changes in the weather over several days. Computers make it possible to experiment with causes and effects in the atmosphere, but it was clear that experts simply did not have enough information to make computer climate modelling reliable. An understanding of clouds is fundamental to understanding the balance between the energy that comes in from the sun and what reflects back out into space. Climatologists still do not know when, where, and why different types of cloud form and how much energy they reflect or absorb. The team of scientists that were gathered together in 1990 to launch the Atmospheric Radiation Measurement Program devised a systematic plan. The aim was to improve our knowledge of climate and climate change and to develop a more accurate prediction capability. 3 semi-permanent facilities were established at strategic locations around the globe, and new monitoring equipment was designed and developed. A climate observatory was established on the prairies in the American state of Oklahoma. Known as the Southern Great Plains site, it is ideal because of its wide variety of cloud types. The area's extremely flat aspect means that measurements are uncomplicated. Features like mountain ranges and large bodies of water have localized effects that can skew data. This site houses the largest group of remote sensing atmospheric instruments in the world. From a meteorological point of view, it is the most closely observed place on the globe. The tropical Western Pacific has sea surface temperatures of around 28 degrees Celsius, the warmest in the world. These warm waters pump an enormous amount of moisture into the atmosphere, an important factor for the global climate system. For this reason, a second climate monitoring observatory was set up on Papua New Guinea's Manus Island in 1996. The ARM program employs local scientists to carry out the day-to-day work of the Climate Observatory and to maintain the equipment. A second site was set up on Nauru in 1998, and in 2001, work began on adding a third site in Darwin, Australia, to support the first 2. The clouds that form in this region extend to great heights, breaking off at the top to form cirrus clouds or ice shields that can actually warm the surface of the Earth. The tropics are where most of the energy enters the planet, and the polar regions where most of the energy is lost. A third atmospheric observatory is centered at Barrow, on the north coast of Alaska, just inside the Arctic Circle. Here, ice and snow are the predominant forms of condensed water for most of the year. They scatter, transmit, and absorb sunlight and radiant heat very differently to liquid water. The major pumps for the global ocean currents are at high latitudes. There is good reason to believe that those pumps will be affected by climate-related changes in the atmosphere. In summer, the tundra absorbs more of the sun's energy. There is very little water vapor in the air, changing the impact of the atmosphere on the propagation of radiant energy. To collect the information needed for an accurate global climate model, new techniques had to be pioneered and new instruments developed. Before ARM, scientists were accustomed to gathering meteorological data from satellites, but detailed information from the ground had only been collected over relatively short periods. Several times a year, the ARM program has what are known as intensive operation periods, when the frequency of operations increases and specialized equipment is brought into play. During this intensive operation period, NASA is working with the ARM program. This G1 aircraft has been fitted with special sensors that can detect minute quantities of aerosol in the upper atmosphere. The plane also carries radiometers to collect yet more data about radiation transfer in the atmosphere. The increased rate of activity during these periods adds a broader base to the information collected. Scientists can get a bigger picture of the way all the varied factors affecting climate interact. Another unique feature of the ARM program is the use of unmanned aerospace vehicles, known as UAVs. The need for flight durations in excess of 24 hours and altitudes up to 20 kilometres means the use of conventional aircraft is not feasible. With two UAVs flying exactly the same course at exactly the same time, one above the cloud mass and one below, scientists have gathered the most precise figures about energy absorption of clouds yet. Managing the huge amounts of data gathered is not easy. The information is collected at a data centre and archived. Every day, this archive receives 2,000 to 3,000 files containing around 100 gigabytes of data. This material is accessible to the entire scientific community. The sun is the source of all our energy. It drives the wind and the ocean currents in an intricate global system. Scientists are only just beginning to understand how complex this dynamic system really is.